Hello, welcome to Microfiche Microphone. I'm Micah, and on this channel we look at microfiche from the past, old newspaper articles in the public domain. We look at them with our modern eyes, our modern perspective, and see what we can learn from them. On this microfiche time capsule, we are looking back at the Juvenile Instructor from the 1st of December 1900, and this article is entitled Lives of Our Leaders, the Apostles, Abraham Owen Woodruff. Okay, I do know a little bit about this guy, and a lot of the significant things that I remember are from his death, which I believe is not even mentioned in this article, because it wasn't even very long ago that he was called as an apostle when this article was written. So I believe he may have even been the youngest of the apostles. So this is going to be, I don't know, not terribly in depth, and then I will mention his death at the end, which is quite interesting. Yeah. It's one of those where you're like, huh, well that was preventable, wasn't it? It's a little unfortunate, yeah. So anyways, let's take a look at this. It was on the 23rd day of November, 1822, oh, sorry, I can read, 1872, that Abraham Owen Woodruff came into this world. So 1872, which means in 1900 he was 28, yeah? So, think about that. He was 28 when this article was written. 28. He was born in a primitive log house built by his father some 12 years before. The neighborhood is one of the most beautiful and peaceful rural districts to be found in all of our scenic land. To the east stands the rugged Wasatch Range. To the west stretch farmlands, orchards, and meadows threaded by canyon streams, wrapped in quietude beneath the giant forms of the mountains. Amid such natural environments, which were peaceful and subdued, as well as inspiring and sublime, and surrounded by that plodding and persistent industry which characterizes Western pioneer life, was the subject of our sketch born and reared. It was in such a place that he spent his boyhood's happy hours, and there, too, during the formative period, when youth buds into manhood, he spent his days in honest natural toil. There he passed his evenings in the humble cottage before the glowing embers of the cedar and the pine, and listened to the stories of a pilgrim people, who, upheld by a sublime faith, experienced perils and hardships unsurpassed in all ages. It was in such a peaceful home, too, that he enjoyed the sweet slumbers of untrammeled youth, and dreamed of the future and what it could hold in its embrace for him. Of the earliest recollections which still live in his mind, perhaps the most impressive is that of the funeral of President Brigham Young. He recalls vividly how his mother raised him in her arms that he might view the great leader in his casket. Well, it's interesting because Brigham Young died in 1877, so he was 5? Like, if that. Like, he was born in November, so he was 4.5. Yeah? Like, yeah, and he remembers that very vividly. That's interesting. At 6, his school days began. In the course of time, he mastered addition, subtraction, and multiplication, and as is the experience of most schoolboys, his labors were not confined to the schoolroom, and with books, for he enjoyed all the dignified privileges of chore boy around the farm. Is that a dignified privilege? I don't know, like I wouldn't have thought of that as a dignified privilege, but okay. Recall, this is the son of Wilford Woodruff. Okay, so, yeah, like, they didn't mention it yet, but he is. He is the son of Wilford Woodruff. At 10, he herded cows, by which means he often realized as much as $15 per month. Prior to that, however, his proclivity to engage in commerce led him to the Liberty Park Springs, where he gathered watercress for the market, thereby supplying his boyish needs in the way of pocket money. He assures us that the money spent in those days was too dearly earned to be spent in useless things, so that articles of real utility alone attracted his ready cash. As his years advanced, he passed from the 40th District School from under the tutorship of Maiden Whitesides, interesting, to the Latter-day Saints College. Here he was trained under the splendid tutelage of Professors Dunn, Talmage, and Mazer. I believe as James E. Talmage and Carl G. Mazer. I don't know who Dunn is, though. At 18, he was placed in a bank where he served the institution first as collector and next as assistant bookkeeper. It was while thus employed that he received a call to the mission field. In the year 1893, let's see, he was 21? Yeah. His father was far from enjoying his usual good health. The illness of his father consequently made his departure to a foreign land not a very easy matter, but trusting in Providence and acquiescing to his father's wishes, he started for the Swiss and German mission. Yeah, I remember that he served in Switzerland and Germany because, yeah, let's just say that I have a very close tie to those areas. Yeah. Within a few days after his arrival to the mission headquarters, he was appointed to labor without a companion in Frankfurt on the Main, Frankfurt am Main, yeah, at which place he was instructed to open the mission. Gosh, it wasn't open at that point? Oh, crazy. Okay, a very charitable family opened the doors to him, which materially lessened the difficulties under which he was to begin his labors. The first great task before him was that of mastering the difficult German tongue. Yeah. People say that German is a difficult language. It is a complex language. As a person who speaks German really quite well, I will say that I wouldn't call it the most difficult language, but it's also not an easy one. However, the vocabulary itself is relatively easy to remember because a lot of English words have Germanic roots. Because English is also a Germanic language, and so it's not that far away from English that it's that difficult to understand and to read. The hardest part is getting the articles right and getting the cases correct, I would say. Word order can also be a challenge. So, yeah. But as far as tenses go, that's actually less complicated than English. But yeah, so there, there's just a few things about it. I would say it is difficult to learn when you're first learning it, but I think that's true of any language. Yeah. But this good family gave him willing and efficient aid in his task. He would read in concert with the children, and he found them his natural teachers. He would arise at 6 o'clock in the morning and put in 2 hours of diligent work on the German grammar. He did not, however, spend all his time in studying the language and reciting it, but with singular courage and characteristic zeal he set about his father's business. He distributed tracts during the day and held meetings in the evening. His knowledge of German was, of course, exceedingly small, but he straightway began to preach and to expound the scriptures in a broken, stammering manner. They're kind of making fun of him, like, dude, give the guy a break, He was at first laughed at, but nothing daunting. He prosecuted his labors and in an exceedingly short time acquired the language. It came to him, he says, as a gift. Yeah. Some people are very good at them, and just after a few weeks or months that suddenly they're able to speak. So, after 5 months of aggressive, single-handed labor, a companion was sent to him, and in a short time a branch of the church was organized where he had labored. 2 months more elapsed, where he was called to the presidency of the Dresden branch. Not long after he had commenced his labors there, he dreamed, one night, that he was fishing in a beautiful stream of water. The dream, he was fortunate enough to catch 3 trout. The dream proved to be prophetic, for very soon afterwards he baptized a man and his wife and daughter. I mean, is that what that meant? The ordinances was performed in the river Elbe, beneath the shade of the spreading lindens, on the exact spot where many years before Elder Budge baptized 2 of our very highly respected brethren, Elders Karl G. Maser and F. Schoenfeld. I didn't know that they were baptized together. That's interesting. Karl G. Maser, I mentioned him earlier, but just in case you didn't know, he was he was a college professor, and he was very instrumental in helping to organize the Sunday school in the church. He was not the first Sunday school president, but he did assist very greatly, very hands-on, in helping to organize the Sunday school. So that's why most people know of him, if they don't know quite who he is, but that's who he is. He is German, and he was a college professor, and I believe of religion, if I'm not mistaken, but I could be wrong. Well, I'll have to look that one up later. Elder Woodruff at this time had great pleasure in meeting and preaching to the old-time associates and fellow teachers of these brethren. They showed him great respect and were courteous in their attention to Elder Woodruff, but it seemed that they were actuated by a sense of regard for their old associates rather than the teachings they heard. Yeah, that's possible. While he was presiding over this new conference, Elder Woodruff spent much of his time in distributing the written word to the villages that border the Elbe, extending from Dresden to Bohemia. Bohemia, if you're not aware, is the Czech Republic. Okay. But he entered one Bohemian village and delivered his message there. He was called from Dresden to Berlin, over which conference he presided 1 year. This conference comprehended such cities as Berlin, Hanover, Stettin, Sorau, and Droskau. I'm not sure where the last 3 are. They're probably in Poland today. I'm just guessing, but that's probably actually a decent guess, because Germany at this time in 1900, when this was written, was much larger than it is today. So because Germany lost a good chunk of it, and after World War II, because they had taken away Poland's land, and therefore they had to give part of theirs back to Poland as part of their what's the word? It's like making up for what they did during the war. Yeah. I mean, could never completely make up for it, but at least they had to, give something of theirs up. While laboring there, the civil officials undertook the banishment of the Mormon elders, and in order that the good work might not be stayed, the elders were often compelled to employ most subtle methods in order to carry on their labors without detection and consequent interruption. Yeah, I've heard of this. Like, in Germany at the time, like, they did not want the missionaries there. So they were really struggling to deal with what they, trying to do their job while the leaders of the area were trying to basically get them to leave. Yeah. At Ernst, Elder Woodruff was disguised as a country swain. He donned the rude garb and heavy clogs, and with the other peasants, toiled in the shop or field during the day. With his fellow rustics, he ate the black bread and smear. No sooner, however, in the evening shades fall, than he would meet in some humble cottage a company of eager saints, who would perchance bring some trusted friend with them, whom they hoped to lead into the gospel light. One thing that impressed Brother Woodruff deeply was the absolute trustworthiness of those country saints. He found them as true as steel, and never were they known to disappoint an elder or betray his confidence in those trying times. Okay, yeah, I guess he would be concerned about betrayal the most, but nobody ever did, so that is impressive. At this juncture, a furlough was granted him, during which time he made a most enjoyable tour of the greatest European cities. Oh, they let him be a tourist for a while, yeah. He visited Austria and Italy and spent the 4th of July in Geneva. Well, who cares? Like, Geneva doesn't care about the 4th of July. I'm sorry, that's just silly when they're like, oh, they spent the 4th of July somewhere in Europe? Who doesn't celebrate it? I don't know, that's weird. He spent 10 days in Rome, visiting among other places the Vatican, and there he went to Naples, Pompeii, and Herculaneum. Having read Bulwer Lytton's fascinating novel, these two latter places were exceptionally delightful to him. Okay. He then returned to the mission, and after reviewing his old field of labor, received a release to return home, having performed a faithful and acceptable mission. Oh, he had kind of an interesting mission, though, you have to say. That's pretty innovative to be like, I'm going to dress up like the people here and pretend like I'm one of them, and that way I can preach the gospel. I mean, that's pretty clever. Elder Woodruff reached his native city in 1896. For a short time, he resumed his work in the bank. On the 30th of June, he was married to Miss Helen May Winters. During October conference of the same year, he was called to the apostleship, and on the 7th day of October was ordained to that office by his father. So let's see. He was born in 1872, and in 1896, he was called to the apostleship. Hang on, is that the one that's wrong? Because there's one of them that has the wrong date in some of the articles. Yeah, it's not. It's 1897. See, I knew that was right because, and how do I know this? Well, I have a website that I have set up and spent years setting up. It's not even finished yet, but it's a work in progress. It's called historicalgeneralconferences.weebly.com, and on that one you can look at the sustaining votes of like every time that they had one. And Abraham O. Woodruff wasn't sustained until the 7th of October, 1897. Yeah, he was not called in 1896. Maybe they might have discussed it, but this is either a typo or it's just straight up a mistake. I don't know which. So, yeah, it's one of those things where it was annoying because it was wrong on Wikipedia. I actually corrected it. I'm hoping it's right now, but it changes all the time. But I was able to correct it. But that's based on the actual sustaining votes of the church. He was not sustained in October 1896. He was not sustained in April 1897. The first time he was sustained as a member of the Quorum of the 12 was October 1897. That was the first time. So that leads me to believe this is just a straight up mistake. So I'll just throw that in there. But I did do some research into this guy. So, in reviewing his brief life, Apostle Woodruff tells us that though he was led into some follies common to youth, though he was often found in unwholesome company and many times gave way to weaknesses of the flesh, yet he never for a moment felt himself liberated from that restraint which a belief in God imposes. Many times gave way to the weaknesses of the flesh. What the flip does that mean? Like that's sketchy sounding to me. Yeah, that's not good. This belief has been early and deeply implanted in his heart. As a deacon, he did his duty. As a Sunday school member, he was faithful. There is no doubt that the influence of these two duties, which by practice had become habits in him, stayed his feet from running towards sin. In that critical period of life, when youth, manhood, and common sense are struggling against the temptations that are spread like the fowler's snare across the paths of the young. To understand the character and disposition of Elder Woodruff, one need but know his parents, for he has received, like the rest of that exceptional family, the priceless heritages which a true and noble, God-fearing mother and a peaceful, devoted, God-serving father bequeathed them in their birth. The strongest qualities of the Woodruff family are, perhaps, natural honesty, childlike simplicity, implicit faith in God, and a due reverence for just and holy man. These very estimable qualities, combined with a gift of industriousness and a total absence of ostentation, are the splendid endowments which Apostle Woodruff possesses in a high degree. These qualities, under a wise and tender mother's training in his early years, and the powerful influence of a true father in later years, constitute the agencies which formed his character and determine his high course of life. This is so interesting because they have yet to mention that his father was Wilford Woodruff. Like, they're kind of skirting around it, but I guess it was so well known that nobody really needed to mention it, yeah? He enjoyed the closest association with his father during the later years of that good man's life. They were most confidential one toward the other. There was a companionship between them so close that it even excluded his nearest boyfriends. In his father, he beheld a shining example in whose life truth had been held as the paramount quality. He had a profound reverence for his father, not only as a parent, but as a prophet of God. Since his appointment to the apostleship, Elder Woodruff had been most diligent in the high duties and offices of his calling. Perhaps the greatest labor which has been given him was the colonization of the Big Horn country. That work was placed in his hands by the first presidency and has thus far been carried on most successfully. He possesses the gifts of humility and sociability, by which he is in close touch with common, toiling people, thereby gaining their confidence and love. In addition to these qualities, he is highly spiritual in his temperament. Thus are blended the very elements necessary in the man who is to build up a country and at the same time build up the kingdom of God on the earth. His appointment to the Quorum of the 12 was a happy choice. It was an inspiration, and in the work of the eventful future which he will be called upon to perform, we can see in Abraham Owen Woodruff those qualities and gifts and dispositions which are needed in the man who is to assist in guiding and directing this people to their higher destinies. It is altogether too early to write his life, as it has only just begun. It is pleasing to contemplate, however, that like a vessel that he has left its moorings, with sails spread and full and bending to the wind, we see him well on his splendid career. Along the pathway of safe and honest purpose will he too speed on, guided by true principle and impelled by a high sense of duty. Nephi L. Morris. I'm sorry, Nephi Morris, to burst your bubble, but he died 4 years later, 20th of June, 1904. So, you have to laugh about stuff like that. You're like, wow, seriously? Okay, sure. So he was 24 when he was called as a member of the Quorum of the 12, although he turned 25 like 6 weeks later. His parents were Church President Wilford Woodruff and Emma Smith. It's confusing because it sounds like he married Joseph Smith's widow. He did not. This is a different Emma Smith, and she's actually not at all related to Joseph Smith. And yeah, there are lots of Smiths in this world. Let me just put it that way. He was named after Abraham O. Smoot. Yeah? was then the president of the Utah Stake and the mayor of Provo, Utah. Okay, so I am going to skip down. He did have more than one wife, but only two, I think. Okay, so here's more information about his death. Following the April 1904 General Conference, Elder Woodruff was asked to go to Mexico and visit the colonies and members there. This he did, this time accompanied by his wife Helen and their 4 children. Sister Woodruff contracted smallpox there, and Elder Woodruff nursed her during the illness that eventually took her life on the 7th of June 1904. 2 weeks later, despite receiving excellent medical care, Elder Abraham O. Woodruff died of the same ailment on the 20th of June 1904. The deaths of the 2 of them, so suddenly and close together, left their 4 young children orphans, the oldest of which was 4, and the youngest was only 7 months. His second wife had remained at home, presumably because of the recent birth of their daughter, who was only 2 months old, and I believe she ended up raising the children. So she ended up raising 5 children on her own. Yeah, he died of smallpox. Why do I say that was so very preventable? Number 1, there was a vaccine. I believe it was 1797 when Edward Jenner came up with the cowpox vaccine. Yeah, not only was it well known, it was well tested, and it was spread around to people. Like, I don't know if he personally had super good access to it, but he definitely did have some access to it, or had at some point in his life. Also, the other thing the reason I think it's very preventable was because he was warned that there was a smallpox outbreak when he was asked to go visit Mexico. He could have gotten vaccinated before he left, but he didn't. Okay? So I feel like this is one of those messages, loud and clear, from the universe to all anti-Vaxxers. Get your flippin' vaccinations. Because smallpox, which is something that has been completely eradicated today because of vaccines, was not yet then. And they could have gotten, he and his wife both died of it in their flippin' 20s. Or early 30s, I guess they were already 30. 32, 31 years old. And you die of smallpox, leaving behind 4 children under the age of 4, the oldest of which was 4. Like, I can't even fathom that. I can't fathom that. And it's just so frustrating. It's so frustrating because, you know, doctors preach this over and over and over again, and nobody's listening. And so the fact that there are people who aren't listening, who didn't listen during their lifetime, and they didn't get a vaccine, even though they knew they were headed into an active smallpox outbreak in the area they were going to. This was so preventable. And that's very, very frustrating to me. Smallpox, by the way, had a 30% mortality rate, so I understand him wanting to nurse his wife back to health, thinking that she would probably be fine, and if he got it, he would probably be fine too. I do get that. But probably 70% chance with a 30% chance of death? Yeah? Does that sound good to you? It doesn't to me. But unfortunately, neither one of them were fortunate, and neither one of them survived it. And this very, very, very preventable death is just so tragic to me. Leaving 4 children under the age of 4. Like, and 5 if you count the one from his other wife. Like, it's shocking to me that this was even an issue at the age of 31. Like, Do I blame him completely? No. Like, honestly, anti-Vaxxers have to learn it from somewhere. But, like, I don't know. So, I wrote an article about this guy. And, oh, by the way, he went by Owen. I don't know if that's very well known. Which I'm not sure why then he's listed everywhere as Abraham O. That's really annoying. But Francis Marion Lyman was also like that. It's listed as Francis M. Lyman, but he actually went by Marion. So, same thing here. He went by Owen. Abraham O. Woodruff. Yeah, anyway, Owen. So what kind of a man was Elder Abraham O. Woodruff? He was a simple, sincere person. He stood up for correct principles and had learned so much about people and about the gospel at such a young age that his mission in life was fulfilled at age 31. Undoubtedly, he would have continued to work as diligently and as faithfully had he lived to be 100. He had a special bond with the young people, being so young himself. He censured in such a way that the one censured still loved him as much afterward as before. He had a personable way about him that drew people to him. He was kind and compassionate and loved his home and family. He refused to allow anyone else to nurse his wife when she developed smallpox. He was truly wise and kind beyond his years. And a little stupid. Let me just throw that out there. Maybe naive is the right word. Yeah, it's just so sad to me. So the scripture I picked out for him was Proverbs 11:3, and that is, the integrity of the upright shall guide them. I feel like they never mentioned anything that he did that was particularly wrong, and that's why I really admire him. But at the same time, get your dang vaccines, okay? Anybody who is listening to this who was on the fence, will you please just go and get yourself vaccinated so that you don't get anything horrible like this. Now, granted, we don't need smallpox vaccines anymore since smallpox has been eradicated. However, if there's anything else you need, an MMR vaccine or a tetanus shot or, I don't know, whooping cough, something like that you haven't gotten yet, please go get it. This is your sign, yeah? Go get your vaccines. Sorry. Anyways, it's one of those very, very tragic moments where ignorance is tragedy, yeah? People say ignorance is bliss, and that's a load of crap. Ignorance can kill you, yeah? And in this case, it did. Anyways, I like his German stories as well, and I am appreciative that Germany is a much more open country now. I also do want to quickly look up a couple of the people that I hadn't recognized. Yeah? People and places. So Dunn, Talmage, and Mazer. So Talmage is James E. Talmage, and Mazer is Carl G. Mazer, who we know of, yeah? So, Professor Dunn, LDS, yeah? Willard Dunn. Okay, that sounds right. Okay, Willard Dunn, 1865 to 1931, was a teacher and academic administrator in Utah. He completed a bachelor's degree in didactics, whatever that means, and became a principal at what was then called the Latter-day Saints College, and later joined the faculty of Brigham Young College in Logan for a year. And then he returned to Salt Lake City. Yeah, that's who that is. Good to know. It's not that important. I was just curious. The other ones that I wanted to know about, we already know about Carl G. Mazer. Who is F. Schoenfeld? Yeah, Schoenfeld. Yeah, let's see who that is. Franz Schoenfeld. He was a chemist. All right, that's interesting. Alright, that's enough of that guy. I don't know him very well, but that's okay. Now, the other one I was curious about, Berlin, Hanover. I want to make sure Hanover is spelled correctly. I'm not 100% sure because I feel like Hanover was one of those things that, is it one N or two, Oh yeah, one N is Germany and two N's is New Hampshire, I think it is. Okay, so one N is correct. My bad. I wasn't sure about that. Stettin does ring a bell, but I couldn't say off the top of my head where it is. Oh, it is in Poland. Okay. I cannot pronounce Polish words, but I will put the name up on here. And let's look at a map, because I think that would be the most helpful thing to figure out where things are. Okay, it's on the border between Germany and Poland in modern day, but back in the day it was definitely in Prussia, and it's on the Baltic Sea And let's see. Szczecin. I can't pronounce Polish, so I'm gonna stop now. Sorał, I'm guessing, is also in Poland. Sorał. Yeah, it's also in Poland. Zari, I guess it's called now. Okay, that's also near the border of present-day Germany and Poland. It's not too far away from it anyway. Alright, and what's the last one? The last one sounded Droskow. You know, that sounds Eastern to me. I mean, that sounds like Moscow, you know. So, but I don't have any idea where that is either. Okay, here we go. I found it. It's not something that comes up immediately when you just search it up, because it's apparently a couple different things. Okay, it's a German word for something, but it's very confusing. Okay, Droschkau. Okay, could be this one. All right, I'm trying to find it. This is really hard to find, apparently. Okay, I found this on the Wikipedia article in German, and it's called Droschkov, maybe, and it is a tiny little town on the edge of Poland and the Czech Republic. I think that's the most likely one. This one was harder to find. I'm surprised by how hard to find this one was. And in German it's Droschkau. So I think that that's more likely than that it's a part of another town. It just didn't sound like it when they were listing things on here, because none of the other cities are parts of cities. They're whole cities, you know. But okay, then they would say the conference comprehended such cities as Berlin, Hanover. Hanover is quite far north compared to where they were. I mean, it's more central, like central north central. Germany, and then Berlin, you know, is kind of eastern. And then Stettin, that was on the border of Poland, of modern day Poland, and the sea. And then Sorał was like the border of modern day Poland and Germany, like closer to, you know, Germany. And then Droschkau is then on the border of the Czech Republic. So that would make sense to me that was their area. That was kind of like the points where their area ended. If you know, drew lines, connect the dots between them, then that would be his area of working. Okay, then that makes more sense to me. I will definitely put up a map and try to actually do that for you, because otherwise it's very confusing. I think that was really interesting. I hope you enjoyed it as well. I just feel like this is one of those stories where, with a very preventable death, and it's just really, really tragic. I find that more tragic than freak accidents and things like that, because you're gonna feel guilty the rest of your life if you knew them and you could have gotten them to take the vaccine. You know, just being like, why didn't you just take the flippin' vaccine? You know? And I'm hoping that made a difference in the church's attitude toward the vaccine, and where they maybe encourage their general authorities to get it. Yeah, since they do so much traveling. Anyways, I don't know for sure, but they really hope that would be like the consequence of someone dying because they hadn't gotten a vaccine. You know, that in the future that would be changed. Anyways, but I hope you enjoyed this today. If you did, give it a like, and please subscribe to the channel, and I hope to see you in the next video.